And welcome again to another episode of Heartland Market Talk on the Open Range. Well, in the headlines, oil prices, they are stabilizing after declining now for 7 weeks. The $78 to $80 price range seems to be our new equilibrium. Earlier this week, we slid to a new 7-week low, dipping just below $70 a barrel briefly before recovering quickly on Wednesday when the Department of Energy released their numbers for our weekly usages, and we had seen a draw on our oil supplies, along with China. We're seeing a pickup in their needs now. Of course, this is seasonal, but there was concerns their economy was slow that they would not necessarily do that. Well, they are. Well, prices do not necessarily need to spike higher right now. That's not in the cards. The trend for higher prices still remains in place as we typically peak for our summer usage just ahead of the 4th of July weekend. And so from there forward, we usually see a decline then in needs and prices. But for now, we're still showing that upward trending moment. Now, something of concern for this year's crop when you consider South America struggled with Argentine and Brazilian production is that weather forecasters, now including the National Weather Service, are calling for a quick switch over from our typical La Nina to El Nino patterns. And if this occurs in the months of July and August, this could be detrimental to production for our grain of corn, which is in reproductive stage in July, and soybeans, which take place in August. This coming Friday, we have the USDA crop report monthly numbers coming out, and so we'll look into that as we go on to Heartland Insights. Well, this Friday, 11 o'clock, the USDA will be out with their ending grain stocks and production numbers that we have coming up. For corn, of course, this is kind of wrapping up last year's old crop. The previous report was 2,122,000,000 bushels were on our carryout. Feed usage has been on the rise, better exports than expected. We're going to drop that number as the estimates for tomorrow, coming off about some 32 million bushels. Soybeans pretty much staying unchanged. 340 million is our carryout. Some are thinking just a small tweak there. Same thing can be said on old crop wheat. Just small tweaks downwards slightly by just 1 million or 2 bushels. Now, it's the new crop stocks here as we go into 2024, 2025. Here's what the changes are. With the acreage coming down on March 31st, from the February outlook, they had a 2,532,000,000 bushel carryout. No, that's off, and that's pretty much right now on acreage and a small tweak on trend lines. Yields were at 2,287,000,000, still a comfortable number. Soybeans pretty much here staying from last month, coming in at 435. We're still looking for steady numbers there. Wheat climbing a little bit as we're seeing a better wheat crop out of Kansas than we had seen over the last 2 years. Those are disastrous crops those last 2 years. Now, moving on to production. As we count our roosters before the eggs are hatched, some are thinking the USDA is going to come down from the trend line yield number of 181 on total yield because our 5-year average is just at just over 175 bushels to the acre. So some are thinking they might tweak it a little bit lower, giving us a smaller production number, under 15 billion bushels. Now, soybean production, they're going to do the same thing. Some are thinking a small downward adjustment on the per acreage number, which gives us a small adjustment then as well, some 50 million bushels on total production. Now, all wheat, of course, this is the first guess on the year, so we have no previous reports to compare to other than last year's crop. And we do, obviously, from last year, we are anticipating a bigger crop coming in some 1,888,000,000 bushels for total crops. So Brazil, last month, 124 million metric tons. They think they will come down this month, 122.2. The bean numbers where the big disparity is between Brazil and CONAB. They're at 155 last month. There's wishful thinking coming down almost 3 million metric tons. Now, keep in mind, Brazil thinks their crop's 146.4 million metric tons, and they won't update until next Tuesday, but many think that number's coming down again. So big numbers in Brazil. Now, corn, again, they're having that disease down there, that stunt disease. 55 million metric tons last month. They think the USDA has to acknowledge it, coming down to 52 million metric tons, which will improve our export pace here in July and August, but normally it's not that strong because we'll be picking up some of that missed Argentina and Brazilian business. For beans, pretty much just a small downward adjustment there. Now, this all translates to the world numbers. Old stock numbers, they're also expecting a decline for corn from 318 to 314. So all these numbers you can note, everything in old crop to new crop on a world basis are slowly coming down, which is why we're seeing our price advances. Now, of course, when it comes to new stocks, we have nothing to compare to as these are our first new guesses. Now, let's take a look at the charts. Kansas City wheat spiking higher early in the week. A couple-day correction here might allow for further strength as we end the week here after this report. Same thing with spring wheat. Small correction from what has been a spiking advance. Not uncommon, especially when you consider how close to long-term resistance we had received a shot at. So still looking like an upward momentum could still do this as Russia had a freeze on their winter wheat overnight, and 2 more nights of freezes could put production in Russia at risk and allow for further rallying here in our winter wheat and spring wheat numbers. Corn on the retreat after early week gains. Of course, not a surprise, farmer selling picking up, but moving average support has been fallen into, and usually once you're above it, after being below it for so long, it becomes support. Let's see what WASDE has to say on Friday's report. Soybeans here too. Big correction. The Brazilian real tumbled, allowing for better values for their beans after lowering interest rates by 1/4 point down there. This has soybeans in a sharp 3-day correction, but still higher on the week. Prospects of further lift are in play here. Spot gold consolidating. We like seeing this here as the market has pulled back substantially over the last month. Notice we're kind of getting this stair-stepping effect here coming up. If gold can break out here on a Friday close, we might be moving back higher again, but seasonally it's not known for that. Now it's time for the question of the day. Of course, we encourage our viewers to send questions into info@heartlandinvest.com. We encourage any questions, stock market or commodity markets, we're here to help. So we had a viewer ask us, what is an arbitrager? Well, an arbitrager is a necessary player in the commodity or stock market gain. What they do is they help find disparities in the market prices like bids and offers. A bid and an offer, which is a difference in the price. You have a last price, where to just trade at, but there's a price to buy at, that's an offer, and there's a price to sell at, that's the bid. Sometimes those prices get too wide, and arbitragers can see that, and they'll step in and they'll narrow up that pricing range, taking advantage of those small trades. Now, obviously, they trade for minimal costs, and so they can make just a little bit of a profit, and they do well, especially on large quantity contracts. Arbitragers also are handy when they see disparities in like the price action between a winter wheat contract and a spring wheat contract when it's not the norm for what we're expecting. Those spreads do move, and there's times winter wheat's worth more than spring wheat or vice versa, but when the trend is moving too quick, arbitragers step in to help provide liquidity. So a necessary evil, so to speak. So again, send your questions to info@heartlandinvest.com. Remember, you can always call us at 701-222-0221 or visit us online at heartlandinvest.com. While you're there, don't forget to check out our Heartland Market Talk podcast and sign up for our daily newsletter. And for producers, remember, we offer crop and LRP insurance as well. Thank you for watching this episode of Heartland Market Talk on the Open Range.